Without a doubt, the number one driver of profit growth is people growth. People think, I've got a business problem. You don't have a business problem. You have a people problem. So as leaders, we need to make people growth our number one priority. And the problem is, especially as things get difficult, people growth becomes our last priority as we're just trying to tread water in 15 other areas.
Hey, Uncommon Leaders, welcome back. This is the Uncommon Leader Podcast. I'm your host, John Gallagher. Look, I'm excited about the guest today, and I know I say that almost every time. I'm excited, I'm thrilled, I'm all those different things. But what I appreciate about the gentleman I'm getting ready to talk to, Mike Goldman, who's an author, he's a speaker, and he's an all-around great guy. But I think it's one of those things like you feel this brother from another mother kind of thing in terms of the passion that we share for developing leaders and developing leadership teams and the way we go about that. Mike Goldman is the best-selling author of Breakthrough Leadership Teams and also the author of Performance Breakthrough. And he's got a new book coming out later on this year that he's going to talk about as well. He's the host of the Better Leadership Team show. I hope that I did okay yesterday when I chatted with him, that I'll end up on that show. And again, it's someone that I know I'm going to learn from into the future. So he's on a mission to help CEOs not just grow their business, but to truly create engaging and fulfilling environments for their teams. So if you ever wonder how to build a team, look, this conversation today is for you. It's not just about businesses. It might be a team in your church that you help to lead volunteers. It might be, frankly, your team at home in terms of who you're leading. But I know we're going to learn a lot from him today. Mike Goldman, welcome to the Uncommon Leader Podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. And you did a great job on my show, so I hope I could equal that. We'll see.
All right. Well, let's see how we can repeat this and run it back today as we go forward. Mike, I'm going to start you with the first question. I start every first-time guest on the Uncommon Leader Podcast, and that's to ask you to tell me a story from your childhood, if you would, that still impacts who you are today as a person or as a leader.
I love this question so much, and I'll try to take a longer story and shorten it a little bit, but you'll tell me if you want me to go into more detail. But when I was a kid, my grandfather, his name was Archie. We called him Papa Archie. My grandfather was the best man I ever knew. He was just strong, and I don't mean muscle strong, although he was a pretty tough guy, but, strong in mind, incredibly proud of his family, not monetarily successful, blue collar guy. And when he was about 84 years old, he was still driving. He was still working. He was driving a cab. He had no business driving the cab anymore. He couldn't see very well. And we got into a number of accidents. And one day he got fired from the cab company. And he was too proud to tell us, but my grandmother told us he had gotten fired. And I always remember that day because I felt like that day was the last day I ever saw my grandfather. And he actually lived another 2 years after that, but he wasn't Pop anymore. He was a guy that always had, kind of a gleam in his eye and fire in his belly. And the gleam was gone and the fire was gone. And we grew up in the Bronx in New York. So we lived on the 6th floor of our apartment building. My grandparents lived on the 5th floor. We had dinner together every night. And then we'd watch the Yankee game on TV or whatever we were doing. And Pop would just sit. And I knew he couldn't hear very well. I'd say, Pop, is the TV loud enough? Could you hear it? And he said, no, but that's okay. It's like he was just waiting around to die. And what I learned from all of that and seeing that over a couple of years, the impact it had on me was once he stopped working, was forced to stop working, he felt like he wasn't of use anymore. And he was just waiting to die. So I could have taken so many different messages from that, but the message I took from that is that in my mind, retirement became a dirty word.
Oh, 4-letter word.
Yeah, retirement's in my, now I don't fault anyone who has a goal of retiring or has retired. I mean, nothing wrong with that. But in my head, it imprinted retirement is this 4-letter word. I'm going to love what I do. I'm going to help others feel fulfilled and love what they do. And thank God I'm lucky enough and I've frankly worked hard enough that I love what I do every single day. And, I just turned 60 not too long ago. And, I hope when I'm 75, I'm saying, yeah, but you should see what my business is going to look like when I turn 80. Like it just imprinted that in me where thankfully I love what I do. And man, I don't ever see retiring. I might slow down, but I'm not sure retiring is in my cards until the universe retires me.
I hear that, and Mike, I appreciate that so much. Thanks for sharing that story, and I can hear that. I'm going to bet we're going to get back to Grandpa Archie as we go through this conversation. But one of the things that I often think about myself, not necessarily the word retirement, but ultimately, I believe I've been presented with a set of gifts that I'm supposed to use, and I want to exhaust every ounce of what I've been given, so that I don't have anything left, don't have anything left to give, whatever that means. And your point about retirement, as long as we're continuously bearing fruit in the lives of ourselves and the lives of others, I think we got to get going. We've still got purpose. We've still got a reason to carry on. So I appreciate you sharing it, and I appreciate the decision or approach you made to be that excited about it. I can see. I hope to be going when I'm 75 as well. We shall see how that goes. Hey, let's jump right into this. Breakthrough leadership teams. For those who may be a little bit new to your work, what does a breakthrough leadership team look like in general when you're working with others right now? And what are some of the benefits that can result from a breakthrough leadership team? Let's just start there from a vision.
Yeah, and just providing the foundation. What I have seen, I've been coaching and consulting for over 35 years now. And what I have seen is as the leadership team goes, so goes the rest of the organization. So it's got to start there. And when you say, what does a breakthrough leadership team look like? The goal of a company, if you're listening to this podcast and you've got an organization, you probably didn't start your organization with the goal of having a great leadership team. And that's not the goal. Great leadership is a means to an end. So I want to talk about what that end is, the way I think of what that end goal is. I think it's about creating a great company, and there are three characteristics I think of creating a great company. And number one, it's about growth. And growth is about the dollars and cents. When I say growth in this capacity, I mean consistent and significant top and bottom line growth. So if you don't have consistent, significant top and bottom line growth, I don't think you have a great team. You probably don't have a breakthrough leadership team. So growth is number one. Number two is fulfillment. I don't care how fast you're growing. If you wake up every day and your team members wake up every day and you dread starting work, I don't think you have a great company, and I don't think you're on a great team. So the first one is growth, second is fulfillment, and the third is impact. If you are not adding value to the world every day, I don't think you have a great company. And when I say adding value to the world, some people think peace in the Middle East, climate change, but adding value to the world could be, you fix leaky pipes that your customers have. But you've got to be adding value. So I think a breakthrough leadership team, and there are 6 pillars of creating that team, and we can go through those at whatever level you want or not. I'll leave that, John, up to you. So there are 6 pillars of building that team, but the end result of that team is growth, fulfillment, and impact.
Love that. Love those 3 criteria, if you will. I was taking notes on that to make sure we get back to those and to your 6 pillars. Like, because I was reading your book, and in the introduction, that's when I got hooked, as you started to tell this story. And I just want to read this section, and I want to let you comment on it, but because it hit me really hard. It says, leaders with a good business idea think they can white knuckle it and make things happen. You touched on this with regards to they didn't start their business thinking they had to build a leadership team. That's how many business leaders become successful in the first place. They launch a successful company through unglamorous, difficult work. But as that company grows, long hours and personal commitment aren't enough to keep the company moving forward. The leader needs help, and in desperation, they hire quickly and wind up with a mediocre team that is unable to scale with the company. So you talked about that vision, that growth, fulfillment, and impact, but you also talk about that from a challenge standpoint in terms of what those leaders run into. What are some of the other things you see in those leaders who are trying to build those companies that are getting in their way? What are some of those barriers?
Yeah, the first one is what you just mentioned. It is the team kind of evolves over time. It starts off with three people around a kitchen table along with the founder, and then it's five people, and then it's 10 people, and the founder says, I can't have 10 people, all these 10 people reporting to me. Joe, could you take two of these? And Susan, could you take these other two? And then all of a sudden you got 50, 75, 100 people, and you've got this structure of your team that doesn't make sense, but it evolved. And you've got people that are stretched too thin. You've got people that aren't clear on what they're accountable for. You got the wrong people in the wrong seats. So I think it's structure of the team gets in the way because we're not proactive about it. And I'll tell you that the biggest thing, and there are so many, but I'm just gonna grab two of them. The biggest thing is not prioritizing people growth.
Mm.
That I think is the number one thing that gets in the way. It's not just a matter of having the right team around you. That team has got to be learning and growing. You've got to be assessing the performance of your people. You've got to be developing and coaching your people, challenging your people, re-recruiting them, coaching people out of the organization that aren't a fit. And, most people, when they think about creating a great company, when they think about growth, do I have the right vision? Do I have the right strategy? Do I have the right processes and systems? And of course, all those things are important. And John, you and I work with our clients on all those things. But I have found, without a doubt, the number one driver of profit growth is people growth.
Mm.
People think, I've got a business problem. You don't have a business problem. You have a people problem. So we need to make, as leaders, we need to make people growth our number one priority. And the problem is, especially as things get difficult, people growth becomes our last priority as we're just trying to tread water in 15 other areas.
Great stuff. Those are barriers to that are things that folks have to overcome. I'm going to come back to a couple of them in our conversation. But as I moved through your book, look, I was so excited when I saw chapter 1, self-leadership. That leader who's running that organization that may have bootstrapped this organization for 20 years doesn't think that they have to be the ones that have to drive. And you touch on a few things that are important for leaders from their self-development, including managing their emotional state and developing an internal locus of control. So touch on one or two of those in terms of what are the action plans for those leaders and how you get them started on the journey. Because I know you also say you don't just work with the team, you insist on working with the top leader as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And maybe you mentioned the locus of control, and you mentioned emotional state. So maybe I'll cover a concept that hits both of those. And I actually have a TEDx that I did, a TED Talk I did back in Gainesville, Florida, about 2.5 years ago that touches on this. It's called The Antidote to Anger. But one of the key things I learned, and frankly, I say I learned it, I need to relearn it every single day. And I learned it from my son. I have a son, he's 30 now, but he's got Asperger's syndrome. And from the time he was probably 2 to the time he was in his mid-teens, I am not proud of the father I was. And there's a whole deep story behind that, but I'll keep it high level. Not proud of the father I was. And a big reason for that was, and I wouldn't have looked at it this way at the time, is I was looking at all the challenges my son had. And in my mind, he was pushing my buttons on purpose. He knew how to piss me off, and man, he was doing it every day. And we had good weeks and a whole lot of weeks from hell. And one of the things I learned over time that I now coach my leaders on is this idea that no one wakes up in the morning and says, what could I screw up today? I don't care if it's your bitterest enemy. I don't care if it's left or right on the political spectrum. I don't care if it's your most difficult team member or peer. No one wakes up in the morning saying, "What could I screw up today?" Everybody is just trying to do the best they can with the resources they have. I call that the law of positive intent. And it doesn't mean everybody's doing the right thing, but when someone's doing something that frustrates you or makes you angry or you don't understand it, as opposed to lashing out because you believe they're doing something wrong on purpose. And we see that in our polarized society all the time now. If you believe they're just trying to do the best they can with the resources they have, it causes you to get curious. Not angry, but curious. You want to know, what do they know that I don't know? What do I know that they don't know? What resources do I have that they may not have? Causes you to ask questions. And that is not the only lesson in self-leadership that's in the book or that I teach my clients. But this idea, the law of positive intent, is such a foundational lesson for people to learn to manage their own emotional state and take control of their lives versus thinking the problem's out there with all these other pain in the neck people. No, no, no. It's got to start with you.
Love that. Your locus control. As I read that in the story, I remember there was a CEO that I was coaching, and he loved to uh, look at his team and say, I want you guys to tell me, what part of the problem am I? It was such a humble question that he would ask those others to point to him, to understand, what he wasn't seeing about himself inside of that locus control that needed to be improved upon. And I love as you go through it, as you go through that with those individual leaders. What are some of the disciplines you encourage those leaders to have to be successful at developing their teams?
Well, when it comes to discipline, I really think of three major disciplines. Now, I'm not talking about self-leadership anymore, although it's impacted. But when it comes to the team, there are, I think, three high priority kind of disciplines of execution. And the number one discipline is aligning around a small number of priorities. I talk to CEOs all the time and I say, all right, tell me, what are your top priorities for 2025? And they list out 12 things. It's like, well, if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So those aren't. Now, if they list out two or three, I know maybe they've got it. So the first thing is aligning around a small number of priorities, whether that's annual priorities or quarterly priorities. And I call those rocks, the quarterly priorities.
Mm-hmm.
So that's number one. Number two is measuring what matters. And by measuring what matters, I mean, you may call them key performance indicators or productivity measures. Think of marketing. If I say you're accountable for marketing, that tells me almost nothing about what my expectations are of you. Does it mean, our website went live on time? Our new logo has a lot of pretty colors. A bunch of people are clicking on our email marketing campaign. Or does it mean you've brought in at least 10 marketing qualified leads each week? What does it mean? Well, I don't know unless we specify that. So it's not only around aligning around a small number of priorities, it's measuring those things that matter so we can keep score and people know whether they're winning or losing. And then third is having a consistent planning and communication rhythm. And what I mean by planning and communication rhythm are things like annual planning retreats. And in my world, those are typically 2-day retreats that I coach and facilitate my clients through. But you don't need a coach. You can do it yourself. But there's annual planning retreats. There's quarterly planning. In my mind, quarterly planning is the most important type of planning. Back when I was in my 20s and 30s and worked for big management consulting firms, we would do 3 and 5 year plans. And they would be beautiful, millions of dollars spent, beautiful PowerPoints sitting in binders on a shelf, gathering dust, because 5 months after they created it, the world changed. That they stopped holding each other accountable. So quarterly planning is critical. So it's annual retreat, quarterly planning, monthly check-ins, weekly accountability meetings, daily huddles. That whole planning and communication rhythm is so important, including one of the most important things is having At best weekly, at worst bi-weekly, one-on-one meetings with
Hmm.
all of your direct reports. That is critical.
Hey, listeners, I want to take a quick moment to share something special with you. Many of the topics and discussions we have on this podcast are areas where I provide coaching and consulting services for individuals and organizations. If you've been inspired by our conversation and are seeking a catalyst for change in your own life or within your team, I invite you to visit coachjohngallagher.com/free call to sign up for a free coaching call with me. It's an opportunity for us to connect, discuss your unique challenges, and explore how coaching or consulting can benefit you and your team. Okay, let's get back to the show. I love that governance model as you walk through annual, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and even daily to a certain extent in terms of what's happening that are very important. That rhythm that happens, and then having the discipline to actually carry that out. Again, just like the binder, it doesn't mean a hill of beans if you wrote it down if you're not going to execute on it. And then I love to start out the prioritizing the things. You can do anything you want. You just can't do everything you want. And if you got too many priorities, you got no priorities. You know that. And I appreciate it. Again, we get so aligned like it's unbelievable. The other side of that you touched on in the book with the teams was a lot of times these leaders who started out on their own, they're bootstrap and they're working really hard. They don't necessarily have the structures and processes in place. And when they look to scale, they hire on kind of the first people. They hire fast and they hire friends or others to help them out. And then there comes a time ultimately that those individuals are not going to take them where they need to go. And I know you touch on it. The difficult decision of letting a leader go is never easy. How do you coach them to the realization that I either need to change this leader or I need to change this leader? How do you coach them there?
Yeah, and by the way, this question is so important to me. It was part of my book, Breakthrough Leadership Team,
Hmm.
that you're talking about. It's kind of the sixth pillar of building a great
Okay.
leadership team is assessing talent, coaching and developing talent. But it's so important that I've got another book coming out in October called The Strength of Talent: How to Grow Your People to Grow Your Profit, where the whole book dives about 1,000 miles deeper on that concept. So this is so near and dear to me. And the way I coach leaders on it is, number one, there's got to be a rhythm. Like I just talked about the
Hmm.
planning and communication rhythm. I have my leadership teams meet every quarter. It's part of our quarterly planning process where they do something I call the quarterly talent assessment meeting, where every quarter doesn't mean they're going back and doing quarterly performance reviews with their people. I happen to think annual and quarterly performance reviews are the worst inventions ever created in business. But I'm talking about leaders working as peers to talk about, debate, hold each other accountable for building strength of talent within their organization. What are we doing to challenge our best people, to re-recruit our best people, to promote our best people, to reward our best people, to leverage, coach, and mentor them? What are we doing to take our mediocre folks and coach them up? And then for the low performing folks, they're low performing either because they're low in productivity and or they're not living our core values. They've
Mm,
got more
there you
more
go.
behavioral. And by the way, I don't care if they're your best salesperson. I don't care how productive they are. If they're not living your core values, they're toxic to your organization. So that is something that I hold my leadership teams accountable for all the time, especially in these quarterly meetings, but throughout. And too many I see too many leadership teams, too many leaders go 3, 6, 12 months, 2 years letting low performers stick
Hmm.
around. And one of my philosophies is fire fast, hire slow. We cannot afford to let these low performers be toxic to our organization, hold us back. And by the way, these low performers are not bad people.
All right.
They're just a bad fit for your organization. And one of the ways I like to reframe it for people that, hey, we're good people. We don't want to just go fire people. They've got lives too. But the way I reframe it and why fire fast is not a heartless philosophy is because I truly believe everyone has the ability to be a superstar somewhere. And I normally,
Yep.
when I'm working with teams, I put up on a slide, everybody's got the ability to be a superstar. And I say, does everybody believe that? And people are like, nah, you went too far, Mike. I don't believe everyone could be a superstar. And then I put up the word somewhere, and people go, ooh, that makes sense. And if they could be a superstar somewhere and they're a low performer for you, by you keeping them around, you're not only hurting the team and the company and your clients and yourself, you're actually hurting that team member because you're holding them back from going somewhere where they can perform at a higher level.
Love that. When I think about that, there's so many organizations, and you touch on it, like it's not about them being a bad person. It's really about fit. And this one again, I'll tie it back to Grandpa Archie in terms of when you do have to let someone go at some point in time. If you've done your job correctly as a leader, and you have those systems in place to help them out, it won't be a surprise for one thing, and you'll be able to inspire and encourage them to that somewhere that you're talking about where they can continuously add value rather than demotivating them, deflating them, ultimately resulting in they lose their spirit and they think that they're not worthy of doing anything. I think it's got to be it is a huge challenge that I hear from leaders all the time. Well, he's a nice guy. He's a friend. My wife knows him. No, I mean, I get that part of it, but sometimes in your organization, you will get what you tolerate, and it's keeping you from performing at a level that you want to get to. Which leads me to my other point in terms of another barrier. Maybe this sits in one of the pillars also is the consensus, you say, can be a trap. Tell me more about that.
The world is moving too fast to wait until everybody agrees. And by the way, people, the world is moving faster than ever. I'm 60 years old. When I was 25, the world was moving pretty fast too. So I think that's the nature of things. And if we wait until we have full agreement on our team, the opportunity passes us by. And I'm not saying as a leader, be dictatorial and just say,
Mm.
here's the answer. That is not a recipe for success either. But man, we've got to debate these issues and then we got to make a decision. And I actually like Colin Powell had this rule that I liked called the 40-70 rule of making a decision. And the idea was you make a decision when you're somewhere in between 40% and 70% sure it's the right decision. Because if you make a decision when you're less than 40%, well, now you're just throwing a dart. You haven't analyzed it or talked about it enough or researched it enough. But if you're waiting until you're 80, 90, 100% sure, again, life is going to pass you by. And one of the philosophies I like to try and get across to my leaders is very often there's no one right there's no one right decision.
Mm.
There is only a decision you make at the time, and then you execute the heck out of it. Very often, it's not, you're successful not because you made the right decision, because you made a decision and then you executed it. So, yes, don't make them too quick, but man, waiting until consensus, waiting until everybody agrees, that could be death. And there's a concept I like to use called disagree and commit.
Mm.
Disagree and commit says, if you're on my leadership team, as long as you have a voice and your voice was heard, the end result may not be what your opinion was. We may go with option B and you thought the right answer was option A. But if you were part of that discussion and you're part of this leadership team, you will leave this room committed to that decision as if it was your own.
Amen. Love that philosophy. I think that's so powerful. You're not going to go out and throw that idea under the bus and bring it down. You're expected as a leader to support it, to commit to it as you walk through that door. Love that. The other thing I often chat about in that decision making, and I love the 40-70. It's the first time I heard that with regards to Colin Powell, but is to ask the question, even when you're at that 70 point, and say, what's the worst thing that can happen? And if we can take the worst thing, then we can go ahead and make this decision because then we can still respond to that worst thing if it does happen. And frankly, we might be able to put some solution in place to ensure that that doesn't happen. Another, I call it a failure modes and effects analysis, but another way to make sure that that doesn't happen. So love that 40-70. Very cool as you go forward with your learning and your teaching. Shifting gears just a little bit. You say if you haven't recommended a book in 90 minutes, there's a problem. Now, you can't recommend one of your two books or your third one's coming out soon. What's one or two books that you recommend every leader should read with specifically with regards to developing teams?
Yeah, great question. And man, if I can't recommend my own, no, some of them that one of them that I love is The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay Stanier. And the coaching habit, the whole idea behind it is we tend as leaders to want to give advice.
Hmm.
And very often when we give advice, we're giving bad advice. We're solving a problem that's a different problem than that person has. We're giving advice that may reflect something that's would be the right action for us, but it's not necessarily the right action for the other person. So Michael Bungay Stanier in The Coaching Habit talks about, he actually has 7 questions, and I've got them up on my board here somewhere, 7 questions that every leader should be asking. It's about the questions and modeling a way of thinking through those questions. So The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay Stanier is a great one. Multipliers by Liz Wiseman
Hmm.
is one of the best books I've read as to how to lead and manage others. And then you may have asked for 2, but I'm going to throw in a third as a
All right.
bonus.
Little bonus.
There's a great book that I recommend to all of the leadership teams I work with called Who, the A Method for Hiring by Jeff Smart, Jeff with a G, Geoff Smart. And it is the best methodology and framework I've seen for how you increase the chances of hiring in individuals that have the best chance to be superstars in your organization.
Love that. Who, Hiring Great. 3 books. I'll put the links in the show notes. Those are all 3 books I have not
Below
read yet.
my
I'm going to have to
below
check those out.
below the links to my
Of
books,
course,
right?
below to your 2. Of course. Now, the third one you're coming out with, you're going deep on that one pillar that you talked about. Who did you write that one for?
That one, it's interesting. It's great. It's a great question because Breakthrough Leadership Team was really written for CEOs, entrepreneurs, and very senior leaders. The strength of talent is to some degree for those same folks, but I broaden the audience a little bit. This book is really for also for anyone that has others reporting to them. Now, sure, people that aspire to lead could read it as well, but really anyone who has any direct reports is going to get great value from this book. Number one, just driving home the whole philosophy and helping them understand why people growth needs to be their number one priority, but then giving them a very, very specific framework for how to assess performance, coach and develop performance, hold themselves and others accountable for building strength of talent on the teams. And there's even a measure that I call the talent density indicator in that book. One of the problems with developing people is it's not very measurable. I say the number one driver of profit growth is people growth. Problem with that statement is the cliche you can't manage what you don't measure, and it's the cliche because it's mostly
Sure.
true. Well, the number one driver of profit growth is people growth. Do we measure profit growth? Of course we do. We could go around, I can go around the room, any group of CEOs, and they would tell us down to the 10th of a percent how they're doing against plan, how they're doing against last year. But if I said, how you doing on people growth, they'd say, pretty good. Pretty good's not a measure. So with the framework I have there's actually in that I have in the book, there's a framework called the talent density indicator, which is a specific measure of strength of talent that I'm really proud of. So really excited about the book.
That's very excited to come out because you're right. It is a little bit tougher to measure that people growth component, what that means to organizations. A lot of different ways they try to with regards to engagement scores. And I'd say I'm not a big fan of surveys when it comes to measuring that type of thing. But if you got a scorecard, I'm excited to see it, Mike, as it comes out. Mike, this has been a great conversation. I know we could keep going and I know we're going to talk again. How do folks get in touch with you and how do you want them to go and get your books?
Yeah, the best way to get in touch with me is my website is mike-goldman.com. And the new book, you could order any of my books on Amazon, but I'm most focused on the new book and trying to get it on a bestseller list. So that's actually out there for pre-order now, depending on when you're listening
Okay.
to this. It's coming out October of 25. But if you go to Amazon and you look for The Strength of Talent by Mike Goldman, you will find it and you can pre-order it there.
Excellent. Folks, get out there and get that book. Mike, thanks again for sharing your wisdom with this group. Like I said, I know we're going to be chatting again more, the kindred spirits that we are with regards to our passion for leadership development. I'm going to give you the last word and finish you up with the question I always have my first time guests. And I'm going to give you a billboard. You can put that billboard anywhere you want to. What's the message that you put on that billboard, and why do you put that message on there?
I'm going to be a little redundant here. The message that goes on that billboard is everyone is just trying to do the best they can with the resources they have. Because I know for me, as much as I did my TED talk on it and I coach on it, I still get ticked off at people cutting me off on the highway and other people, so I need to be reminded of that all the time. So man, I need a whole bunch of billboards out there, not for everybody else, just for me.
Just for you. I gotcha. I gotcha, Mike. Yeah, and I think that one for me is the folks who leave their shopping carts in the middle of the parking lot at the grocery store. Drives me nuts. It's a pet peeve of mine. Like, just put it back. The corral's right there. Just put it back in. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's doing the best they can with the resources they have. Hey, Mike, thanks for sharing with the group. I appreciate it. I know they're going to find value in it, and I wish you the best in the book launch. I'll be sure to get my copy here as soon as we sign off.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely.